Hello and welcome to Items On, the podcast where you get to follow your favorite Melee players and personalities both on and off the sticks. I'm Ethiopium, and our special guest today is Ginger. Ginger, how you doing today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. You know, another interview, can't complain, homie.
Heck yeah.
Usually how we start these interviews is I ask you, what were you doing before you started Smash, and how did you find your way into Melee?
So, man, I was excited for you to ask this question because I think that my answer is going to be different than a lot of people. Because I think a lot of people, especially that are like high level Melee players right now, they kind of found Melee during their college years, maybe like early high school, stuff like that. They were able to like drive to tournaments or whatever. Um, but like my complete honest answer is like I had a brother that was 12 years older than me. And he was like super into video games and super into Nintendo games, especially. And so essentially, like when I was like 3 or something, the first Smash game came out, and I was just like playing with my brother and his friends or whatever. And then when Melee came out, I got it for Christmas when I was 6. And I got my own little CRT, got a GameCube, got Melee. And I would play every day with my brother when I was 6 years old until like literally now, essentially.
Wow.
So it's like, what was I doing before Melee? It's like I'm going to elementary school, I guess, like kindergarten, you know? And that's like legitimate. My first tournament that I went to, I think was when I was 8 years old.
Wow.
It was an anime convention at GVSU.
Mm.
JFAX is what it's called. I don't know if it still happens, but it was pretty legendary at the time. They would like run a little Melee tournament. My brother and I would win. But yeah, so there honestly, the portion of my life that is before Smash is so small that it would be like difficult to describe. Again, like yeah, literally kindergarten and preschool would be like my answer. Um, but yeah, that's essentially how I got into it. And then I've essentially been going to tournaments ever since then. I took like a small break when Brawl came out. The scene kind of died.
Mm-hmm.
But my brother and I sort of cultivated a local community. Like that's how I was introduced to the community. Is my brother and I would like literally put up flyers around town to like, hey, give us a call if you want to play Melee sometime.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, that's sort of how we built our local community. We found out about like the greater Michigan community kind of as things went on. Smash boards became more of a thing. People were posting about tournaments, but yeah, that's essentially my introduction to the community.
That's pretty crazy. I want to ask you a couple questions on that because,
Yeah.
like you said, that is pretty unique. Like, what was it like, growing up in the scene? I mean, a lot of people, like you said, they're at least in their teenage years by the time they find Melee, if not in college. Usually, I feel like college is usually when people figure it
Hmm.
out. But like you said, you're like 8, 9 years old, and you're growing through this game that is, has a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds. I'm sure that that could be something that's helped you develop as a person, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think I kind of have to shout my brother out because he was so willing to like really go out of his way to involve me in all of this, right? Like he could have just gone to tournaments as like a college age guy, but he knew that I was like his brother and I really love video games and really love Melee. And I think he saw some potential in me as like a player as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so like he'd drive me to these tournaments and it was very, very grassroots back in the day. Um, and like your local community are just like guys that you know, and you go to Smash Fest and tournaments are all house tournaments. There's no like big venues. We're not in the Kobo Center or whatever. It's like you
Yeah.
go to somebody's house, and then people from a couple hours away maybe are driving to this guy's house, and people are hanging out. And I think there could have been some of the experiences I hear from a lot of young people that get introduced to the scene is there's like a lot of negative influences on them, like maybe there's drinking going on or people feel unsafe, which is totally understandable, especially with a game where there's a lot of older people playing because Melee is such an older game.
Mm-hmm.
But my brother was always there, sort of like chaperoning me through the whole thing. He was also like ripped and scary and mean, so it was like nobody's gonna mess with me. My brother always wanted me to talk shit. He wanted me to be like like a little bratty kid to these people. Like I'm whipping their ass because I'm 8 years old. He wanted me to talk shit to him. Like, but anyway, because he'd stand up to him. I never wanted to do it. But no, getting introduced to so many different types of people. Like I grew up That's a great question because I grew up in Holland, Michigan, which is like sort of there's a lot of like Republican Christian white folks. That's like literally the whole town.
Yeah.
There's a pretty decent like Hispanic community, which is cool. And I grew up in the public school system, so like I experienced a lot of diversity in my life, but like it's not the most diverse place in the world. So
Hmm.
getting introduced to people from different backgrounds with different jobs and different races, different upbringings, like it really was interesting to step into that community and be involved from such a young age. I think it was really, really helpful with my growth.
Do you feel like, because you're already talking about how at a young age you were playing tournaments? I mean, were you always competitive, or did Melee foster that competitive side in you?
That's a great question too. I played sports from an early age, and I
Mm.
enjoyed sports. Like I played soccer when I was young. I started playing tennis when I was a little bit older. Um, and so I guess I sort of always enjoyed competition, but like melee was different. Because I don't think I was some sort of like genetic freak, right? Like I wasn't super tall. I wasn't amazing at tennis or basketball. I was like decent or whatever. But it's not like I was like one of the best players in the US or the state or something. Something cool with video games, I think, is that like we're all able to pilot this character that is the same strength for everybody, right? Like we're all, well, maybe these days we're not holding the same controller, but like
Yeah.
we're holding the same controller, we're playing the same character, and like the potential is there for everybody. Like we're all piloting the same thing, and so I think that was really cool to me. And I've always enjoyed that about video games, that like you can be this like I'm like a badass bird with metal legs that's kicking people around, and it's like um, using this character, I can outsmart somebody or like out practice them and legitimately get better than them, and that was like a huge drive for me.
Hmm.
Um, and I think like just participating in tournaments from a young age, maybe being involved in sports, definitely fostered my competitive spirit that I think is still there today.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Another question I have, I guess, because I am interested in this, is like, do you feel like you had to grow up a little bit quicker because you were in the scene at such an early age? I mean, you did have like a lot of people, like you said, older and more diverse. For
Hmm.
a guy that's like 8, 9, 10 years old, a kid, that can definitely make you grow up quicker, or make you maybe be a little bit more childish, like you said, maybe be a little bit more bratty on the side. Like, how did that affect you? I guess.
I really like to think I had a good head on my shoulders. I
Hmm.
don't think I had some. Okay, let me start. There was one kind of silly thing about it. Like I didn't have a god complex or anything. I wasn't like, oh, I'm this like genius kid or whatever. I was like pretty good for my age. There wasn't other 8 or 9 year olds that were like wave dashing or doing the stuff that I was
For
doing
sure,
back
for
in the day.
sure.
My brother would like call me a prodigy or whatever. I was like, oh, that's cool. But so my original tag was Ultra Satanicus, which, yeah, which is ridiculous, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But it was a tag given to me by my brother because it was like a joke. Like I literally had a bowl cut. I should like send you a picture or something. It'd be adorable. I had a bowl cut. I was this like 7-year-old ginger kid, and they'd be like, "Can we get Ultra Satanicus to the TO desk?" And I'd be like, "Hello, like, how's it going?" Um, but like so I almost had this persona as a kid where I was like, I pretended to be like, Ultra Satanicus and like a whole little thing. Um, but no, I don't think that it forced me to grow up that much faster. I really feel like I was just enjoying my time playing video games, meeting people. Still went to school. It's not like I had some sort of level of fame or anything. So
Yeah.
I don't like anybody at school cared about anything that I was doing. So, my day to day was still just going to freaking elementary school and hanging out with kids and occasionally playing sports, hanging sleepovers at friends' houses or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't think that it aged me more quickly than others. Um, but yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I want to ask you, like, when did you decide, like, to take it to the next level? I guess. I mean, I assume, and maybe I assume wrongly, that as a young kid, you're in it for the love of the game. You're with your brother. You're having
Hmm.
a good time. Was there a point where it's like, wait a second, like, let me cook a little bit. Like, let me try to beat some ass right now.
Yeah, yeah, no. Another fantastic question. There's like 2 points that I would kind of consider, which is after that break I took when Brawl happened, and it was about
Hmm.
a 5-month break from like 2008 to 2013. I came back. I went to like sweet uh, 16, 13, something. I
Mm,
can't remember which suite it was. It's so long ago at this point, but it was like winter of 2013. Came back to tournaments and like I did pretty well. And I like the scene was so much bigger than I remember. And esports was becoming more of a thing. There was like, Mango is getting sponsored to C9 and, League of Legends and Dota were like huge and esports is growing and Melee has a real chance. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And I was about 17 or 18 at the time,
mm-hmm.
at that point, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. This childhood game that had this community that I loved as a kid is really growing to this place where people are making money and people are like establishing careers out of this thing. Like that's kind of crazy. Maybe if I practice enough, I think I have it in me. I think I can practice enough to like beat the competition, become one of these guys. Um, that was like the first time where I started thinking about it. And then when I really committed to it, where I was like, okay, I'm dropping everything. I'm like quitting my job. I've worked at Subway.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna quit my job. I'm gonna pursue Melee. I'll like stream. I'll go to tournaments. I'll like try to win locals, and that's how I'm gonna pay my rent. That's how I'm gonna buy my groceries. Um, I'm pretty sure I was 23, and like I said, I moved to Brighton and I quit my job at Subway. Saved up a bunch of money working at Subway so I could get a streaming computer. It was like all planned out. It
Mm,
was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to pursue this. And I moved to Brighton in Michigan, which is essentially, the only reason I moved there is because it was the center hub for all of Michigan Melee, essentially. Because I was a half hour away from Ann Arbor, half hour away from Lansing, like 45 minutes from Detroit. It's like I could literally be there and go to all the tournaments.
mm-hmm.
So it was just like this big plan, and I was like, okay, well, this is the time where I'm going to be a professional in this game, and that's going to be the only thing that I do.
So, what I mean, what was the catalyst for that decision? I mean, you said like, you're working at Subway, you're saving up the money. Like, was there a point where you're just like, dude, like, what made you said, fuck it, let's do it? I mean, that must be a scary decision to make.
Yeah. So, originally out of high school, I'm going to go back to this. So, originally out of high school, I had to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, and I was really into music. That was my other passion. I was like an all-state percussionist. I was like pretty good at drums, percussion, that sort of thing. I was like, this is what I want to do. So I applied to colleges. And I was going to study music education because I wanted
Mm,
to be a music teacher. That essentially ended up falling out. I dropped out after completing 2 years, and I had to move back home with my parents. At that point, I'm like 21 or 20, moving back in with my parents after dropping out of college. And like, I didn't enjoy regular academia. It's like I enjoyed music, and that was inspiring to me. And I enjoyed video games, and that was like something that felt a little bit more than recreation, but like the music side of things didn't work out. And it was essentially like my parents were like, okay, you can stay here. You need to have a job, right? So I started working at Subway, saving money. But they're like, you need to figure out what you want to do with your life. If it's not music, what the heck? We've never known you to be interested in like anything else.
mm-hmm.
Um, and so I was like, wow, I don't know if I want to be like a struggling musician or something like that. Like I wanted to teach music. I didn't necessarily want to make it myself. What are like my other passions? I really had to search for a while. And I spent that time at my parents' house, and, working at Subway, just thinking about what else could I be doing that would be fulfilling in my life? What else could I do that would make me feel like I'm following a passion? And then, Melee being there and continuing to grow through that period, even when I was in college, was like, okay, if other people are doing this, if Mango's able to do it, I have to be able to do this. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
think I can do it. Um, it was really sort of this almost desperate situation where I needed the one other thing I had in my life kind of fell apart, and I needed to
Mm.
fall back on my other passions, and Melee was kind of right there, luckily.
That's really interesting. I mean, do you feel like, I mean, I assume that passion really drives you in life then. I mean, how do you, because at the same time when you turn Melee into a job, it turns into a business, right? And so
Hmm.
how do you balance being passionate about the game with, you know, maybe having the pressure of I need to perform at this local, I need to perform at this regional to pay the groceries or pay the rent?
Mm-hmm. Um, Man, the thing is, I try to never think about the money. I'm not very motivated by money. I'm a
Hmm.
really simple guy, I guess. I don't own that many things. It's like I have my computer. I don't know, I got this I got this for free. The artwork in the back I got for free for my subscribers. My girlfriend made me this rug. It's like
It's a
I don't
sick rug.
this keyboard I got from one of my subscribers. Like I try to never really obsess over money or wanting things. It's just I essentially just want to perpetuate myself. It's like I want enough money to continue the passions. There were times though, I have like a screenshot in my phone that I think I'll always keep where I had like 8 cents in my bank account and rent was coming up. Like you can see the date. It's like
Hmm.
rent was coming up in like a couple weeks. It's like, okay, I had to place either first or second at the next like 3 locals, and I had to get paid out by Twitch or else I can't pay rent this month. Um, and so maybe it's in there a little bit in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I don't think it affects competition too much. The thing that I would say is like sort of a streaming or making YouTube videos, there's a temptation to be like, well, I could make something kind of clickbaity. I could be like, oh, top 5 Melee's greatest moments or something from Ginger's perspective. And it's like,
Yeah.
I don't want to necessarily make content, especially that I don't feel like I'm fulfilled by. I want to make educational content that I feel is helping people, or entertaining content that would be entertaining to me that I think is like helping somebody get through their day. Um, and so that's the real thing where it's I really have to balance my passion for being an educator and being a competitor with, well, I do need enough views in my stream to make sure I have the subscribers so I can pay rent. Like literally at this point, that's where most of my revenue is coming from.
Hmm.
Um, but when it comes to tournaments, it's just it's a so you can kind of build yourself into this logic system where like, well, if I worry about the money, I have a lower chance. Like I'll probably play worse
Hmm.
if I'm like sitting there worrying. And so if I play worse, I have a lower chance to get the money. So like at the very core of it, you just need to not worry about the money, and you'll likely make more money. That's
Yeah.
essentially how my mind thinks about it. It's just like, okay, well, why would I worry about it? That would only serve to hurt me.
Hmm.
Um, so I try to just focus on the in-game stuff whenever competition comes up.
You brought up something cool that I wanted to touch on, which was, you know, like how you making content on YouTube and on Twitch.
Hmm.
Um, do you feel like you have the same passion for that intrinsically like you do competing?
Oh, that's a great question. So it kind of goes hand in hand. Like I mentioned, I have this passion for being an educator.
Hmm.
And when I studied music education, like that's the thing. I wanted to inspire kids. Like the reason I wanted to go pursue music is because I had a music teacher in high school that really inspired me and believed in me and like, pushed me musically. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. I want to do this for other people. Like, holy cow. Like it kind of sparked this like, wow, I have that in me. Like I want to help other people like that. Um, and then when I found out music education isn't really what I thought it was, I was like, whoa, I love Melee. I love competing. I love video games, all this. And I also love teaching people. So it definitely, I do have that same sort of passion. It's the same feeling where, like, I used to give a bunch of lessons. I give less lessons now, but I would give lessons and people would be like, dude, I haven't beaten this guy in 3 years. Like, it just seems impossible. I don't know what I can do. And then I would give them a couple lessons over the course of a couple weeks or whatever. And they'd be like, yo, I took him to game 5 or whatever. And then they'd be like, yo, I beat him like 3 times in a row. Like, thank you so much. I'd be
Yeah.
like, oh, God, this is like the best feeling of all time.
Yeah.
It's just so cool to help people achieve their goals, especially when they're willing to put in the work. Like working with other people like that is just so cool. So yeah, absolutely. I love making educational content. I love seeing that I've helped people. It's a really big motivator for me for sure.
That's interesting. You said you touched on how you had teachers in your life that inspired you to become more of an educator. Were there people in Melee that helped you inspire to be, or maybe even educated you as you went up through the ranks?
God, I just have to say it again. That's an amazing question. Um, no, that's so good. Absolutely. I mean, I like I could shout out so many people. I guess this is my opportunity to, but like
Mm-hmm.
my brother, obviously, he was like better than me for a long time, and he went out and pursued stuff on Smash boards and tournaments to bring me to, and like he would teach me some it's like advanced techniques. The first people that ever helped me ever, Midwest legends Eddie and Tink, came over to my house when I was 7 to teach my brother and I advanced techniques: wave landing, wave dashing, wave shining, L canceling, pillar comboing, all that stuff. I learned because of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow, that was such a selfless thing to do. They went out of their way, like returning from a tournament, to like come up into Michigan and then leave just so that they could like help us out because we were so curious about it all. Um, Beach, if you know Beach, was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
he was my roommate for years. Taught me so much about being a competitor and mentality. KJH, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
somebody that's like I've grown with, but also he's taught me so much. And those people are so inspiring. Kalindi's work ethic is so inspiring and like really showcases what you can do when you put an effort. Um, so yeah, there's been so many people, um, like also people that I've seen from a distance that I know now that I would consider like friends, like Zoo or Mango, or like it's crazy to me that like I know homemade waffles. I see homemade waffles at a tournament, and I give him a fist bump, like give him a hug. What's
Yeah.
up, Brandon? It's like, what, dude? I was listening to his commentary when I was 8. But
Yeah.
these people definitely inspired me to be involved in the community, or like Brandon, make content and like put out YouTube videos about Melee. Like, um, yeah, there's so many inspirational figures in the community that it's like I could just probably go on forever. But those are some of the huge ones for me for sure.
What do you think, as someone who does coaching, someone who prides themselves in helping others, like, what do you think are some things that you had to learn in order to be a better educator? Like, what are some of the,
Mm.
like, tips maybe that you can help? Like, hey, when you want to teach someone XYZ, because I'm sure you see a lot of players and they form different habits that probably get into patterns where you say, I've seen this before. Like, this is what you need to do, like, in terms of learning.
Definitely. I think the biggest thing, I always refer to it as like people speaking Melee languages. There's like
Mm-hmm.
different languages. The easiest way I can kind of describe that is like Mango speaks a different Melee language than me, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you were to get advice from Mango or something, he'd be like, "Oh, you just got to like go in, bro, LOL." And then like maybe that works for somebody. Or like, "Oh, you got to like shield a little bit more." He'll just say something like that. And sometimes that clicks with a person's mind. And then me, I'm just like, okay, on this frame, like, well, like I'm a little bit more analytical with it, right?
Yeah.
And so what you need to do is you don't just need to diagnose the issues within somebody's gameplay, but you need to know how to communicate that to the person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think understanding how they can come to those conclusions is really important. Um, so it's constant like reassurance throughout these lessons. That's like, does that make sense, or do you want me to like word this in a different way? And I think I've almost like learned different Melee languages throughout giving these lessons, and that was interesting to me because I kind of knew that I viewed the game maybe in a little bit more of an analytical way than others, but through giving lessons, I really had to be like, well, I have to change how I word some of these things for these people so that they can get to the same level of understanding, maybe just in a different way.
Mm. That's interesting. This podcast, like, I always like to ask questions not only in Melee but how Melee has affected life, and I feel like that leads to a follow up question, which is, being able to communicate and hone your communication skills through Melee. Has that been able to affect you outside of Melee in terms of communicating to others?
The funny answer I have to this is that I think Melee takes up most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's like maybe I'm a decent communicator outside of this. Like, um, man, okay, a situation that's tied to Melee, but maybe communicating through Melee has helped me in is like talking to sponsors,
Mm.
like interviews with sponsors, or like talking for myself. Like people will ask me questions in interviews, like, why should we sponsor you or something? I don't just like freeze up or whatever. I feel like I can give them effective answers that are communicated directly to them instead of like panicking or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think my camera's out of focus.
Don't
I'll
worry, it
fix that
happens all
for
the
you
time.
because yeah,
There
there
we
we
go.
go. Just I know the video is gonna be on there, but yeah. So that's almost tied to Melee because I can sort of talk about my Melee accolades and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But in all reality, almost the entirety of my life, is surrounded by Melee. It's what I do for recreation and work, and it's my roommates were Melee lovers, and so like most of what I do is just talk about Melee. Um, but I do like to think that learning how to communicate and being involved in such a social situation like the Melee community, like you meet up with people in real life. Like I can talk to a stranger because I go to tournaments and I have my whole life and I've walked up to strangers and like had this understanding with them and had to communicate with them. So yeah, I absolutely think it's helped me, and maybe in the future after Melee or something, I'll feel that a little bit more.
Hmm.
But yeah, for right now, my life is just like consumed by the game essentially.
I respect that. It's good. It's good. Uh, I had a little, maybe one more follow up question on that, which was you touched
Hmm.
on how tournaments, like, they sort of force you to like talk to other people and stuff. I mean, back in the day, in order to get good friendlies, in order to learn a lot of things, you had to be like, I think, amicable with a lot of people. Like you had to like be chill. Otherwise people wouldn't teach you how to wave that. They wouldn't teach you how to like shield drop or do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Cause it was before, everything was on YouTube, or before Uncle Punch and all that. Do you feel like now that the game has shifted more online, we're losing a little bit part of that?
Whoa. I didn't know that that's where you're going to go with the question, but yeah, like the way I think about it is that yeah, for sure. And I think it's unfortunate, and I think you can see it a lot with like Twitter discourse.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the hub of like our communication these days. It's not like you go to like the local gymnasium or whatever and meet up for a tournament these days. It's like you literally, the way we're communicating to the community is like maybe discords or Twitter discourse or whatever, and that's how we're talking to each other. And the only other way, especially through the gameplay, is like playing online. And I feel like it's really easy to dehumanize your opponent when it comes to online play. They're
Mm-hmm.
not sitting next to you. You're not laughing with them. You're not like joking around. And so it's really easy to be projecting maybe like, oh, this person's being BM, or there's some like nonverbal communication going on through the game that I feel like it's really easy to get toxic with. Where like that kind of toxicity never really occurred when you have to go to a tournament with somebody. And if you're going to be like the toxic asshole in the room, like nobody wants to play with you. Nobody's going to teach you things or communicate with you at all. Like you're on the Facebook page and nobody wants to reply to what you're saying. Like that would be the case. But I feel like yeah, it's almost interesting because the ease of use of the tools that we have now are maybe um, sort of inciting some of this negative behavior, I think. But
Mm-hmm.
it's like at what cost, I guess, because these are really useful tools. But the social dynamic within the community has definitely shifted, I think, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's something that I've definitely noticed, and I feel like, I don't know, it worries me like a little bit. But at the same time, I
Hmm.
mean, like, the FGC has done this, and
Hmm.
they've survived and have thrived through it. So I feel like we just got to find our footing in it, but it might be a little rough here and there. I mean, a question from that is, I mean, you play ranked like a ton. I mean, you're a rank grinder, right? I
Hmm.
mean, I'm sure you've had to learn how to deal with BM online. You've had to deal maybe with yourself tilting online if you got like two
Hmm.
games in a row, and when you're up at your MMR, you lose two games, it's like 40 MMR gone. And so how do you
Yeah.
deal with the, not only, like that dehumanization that you talked about, but the tilt that comes from playing online?
Yeah, I mean it can be difficult. I think a lot of it has to do with like my mood in the moment, which can be influenced by so many things.
Mhm.
Um, but one of the kind of useful things about that, I try to take it all as a lesson. Like when I lose at a actual tournament, right, where I'm like in person, and maybe I didn't play well. That's so tilting. It's obviously tilting to lose, to try that hard and then to lose, and then maybe the person that you lost to you think is a jerk or something. I've lost to jerks before. It sucks. I don't like losing to those people. Um, but I think there's lessons in everything, right? Like
Mhm.
if somebody's BMing you and that causes you to tilt and then you lose and then you get even more tilted and then you cue it back because you're tilted and then you lose because you're tilted and you're queuing it back and then you get even more tilted and it snowballs. Recognizing that is really important. I'll use a quote. I can't remember the quote. I'll paraphrase. Novak Djokovic, maybe the greatest tennis player of all time, said having a good mentality isn't as important as resetting back to a good mentality. Like, you can get frustrated or tilted or angry, but if you let that control you and you don't stop it, then
Hmm.
you like can't be a champion. And I think that using ranked in this way, where I know other people are going to try to BM me, other people are out there to try and beat me, people are going to Q snipe me or whatever. It's like, I want to take this as a challenge to be more robust in my way of thinking, and use that so when I go to real tournaments, I can focus even better and maybe tilt a little bit less.
That makes sense to me. That makes sense to me. I want to switch it up a little bit. I'm always
Hmm.
interested in how you found your character and why you stick with your character for so long. Some people, do changes here and there, especially as the meta has changed, and you've been through a lot of meta changes in your career.
Hmm.
Why Falco?
So originally, I was a Falco Ganon dual main very early on when I was a
Okay.
kid. But I think when you're a kid, especially, it's like it's just the aesthetic of a character that draws you in. It's not like
Hmm.
I really thought about that gameplay that much. But I was like, I just thought he looked cool and he like moved in a cool way and he had this blaster gun and I was like, that's just dope. Blue is my favorite color, so like I played blue Falco. I played blue almost everything. I played blue Ganondorf, blue Fox, whatever.
Hmm.
Um, and so I just started playing Falco because I thought he just looked cool. Down airing people was fun. They'd like shoot down to the bottom of the blast zone real fast. Forward smashing people felt good. Um, and I think it was sort of interesting that, I was never too concerned with the meta or like what the best character was. I just kind of wanted to play the character I had the most fun with because that
Hmm.
was important to me. And then through learning more about the game and becoming sort of a more analytical person when it came to the game, uh, I found, and I still truly believe in my heart of hearts, that Falco is the best character in the game. And it's sort of like it's like happenstance that I thought he looked cool, and now as a competitor who's trying to make this their career, it's like, well, maybe if I thought Fox was so much better than Falco, maybe I'd switch to Fox, because it would really help my career. Um, but I truly, honestly think Falco is not only the most fun character, maybe a really aesthetically cool character, but I also think he's the best character. Um, and just a little bit of advice that I would give to other people is like, you only need a character to be good enough to reach your goals, and then you just need a character that is the most fun to you.
Hmm.
Because grinding becomes so much more natural when it's fun. Like if I did think that Marth was in like a class of his own, like I don't enjoy playing Marth that much. So like, would I even practice him? I don't know.
Hmm.
But so since Falco has this like crazy trifecta of things for me, it's like it's so easy to just continue playing him essentially.
Okay, I'm interested in this because I'm a Fox main. All right,
Okay.
I'm a Fox believer, but I play Falco on the side like all Fox mains do because Falco's fun as hell,
Mm-hmm.
and I sort of agree. And take this with I'm a 2 and 2er. What the hell do I know, right? But
Sure.
I watch a ton of melee, and I just like, man, I sort of agree with you. Like Falco is so incredible as a character, but is so like frustrating to play in tournament. I feel like Fox is
Mm-hmm.
so much easier to play in tournament, and I feel like that's why I play him in tournament because it's
Sure.
like man, the game's hard enough already. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Have there been
Mhm.
times where Falco has like frustrated you, especially since you're pushing it so far competitively at the highest level?
Yeah. Has he ever frustrated me? Every single tournament ever of all time forever. I always tell people like the amount of times I've thought about quitting the game is more times than you've entered tournaments, like
Yeah.
easily. Only because I've entered so many tournaments, but it's like, and the amount of times like Falco has frustrated me is it's constant. The way, okay, an example of this is like I've talked to Drug Fox, he was my coach for years. I
Mm-hmm.
very recently stopped lessons, but um, he used to play a little bit of Falco, and it was going well for him, and then he stopped. And people asked him like, "Why do you stop playing Falco? It seemed like your Falco in some matchups was doing even better than your Fox or your Sheik." And he was like, "The way you lose with Falco is just too stupid. It's too frustrating. Like it doesn't feel good the ways you lose with Falco." And so when I lose, every time I lose is frustrating. It's like, oh, did I really die at 10 again? Did I
Mm-hmm.
really like, oh, I just messed up barely. I thought I was close enough, and then my shine barely missed, and I died for it. Like, oh, it can be very frustrating. Um, but I think the way I stick that out is just sort of the logical side of my brain tries to take over, and it's like, okay, if you are just better, it's not Falco's fault. It's that like if you positioned better or if you had better recognition in the moment, those frustrating things wouldn't have happened as much. So it's just an uphill battle of like testing myself, and every time I die, there's something to be learned there. Um, but yeah, absolutely, Falco's frustrating. I get why other people would choose other characters. It's a lot of characters are like more intuitive, especially at like a tournament level. Um, but yeah, that's essentially how I feel about Falco.
I definitely feel you. You know, I play ranked with both Fox and Falco. Before people in the comments ask, I don't check my MMR, so don't ask. You know what I mean? But but like, if I lose with Fox, I don't care if I'm playing against like a DK that chain grabs me on FD or whatever. Or well, I guess I
Hmm.
would counter pick, but you know what I mean. It's just like,
Yep.
hey, I shouldn't have got grabbed. GG's. You know what I mean? Like,
Uh
it's not as frustrating. But then a Falco, I just die on some stupid ass shit, and I'm like, dude, what the hell is it? Like, it does get me more tilted. I don't know why. So I
huh. Uh
definitely
huh.
empathize with you on that. I guess one of my questions is, I think people would be interested to know, why do you think that Falco's number one? Because a lot of people don't.
Yeah. So it's an interesting question because it's hard for me to just give like a couple sentences as an answer, but because the game's really complex, and I think Falco is really complex, like stupid complex.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but essentially, one of the things that I would say is that a lot of characters, to get analytical for a second, a lot of characters have to make decisions without being able to hit confirm things. What I mean by this is like an example. Let's say that you're pressuring somebody's shield as Fox. You're doing like drill, shine, drill, shine, drill, shine. It's not like super common pressure these days. It used to be. But in order to combo off of that shine, you would have had to you just had to read that the opponent was gonna get hit by the shine, and then you wave shine and up smash them. Because if at any point the shine hit and you didn't start doing the wave shine, like you didn't wave dash afterwards, then you would have just done another drill. Like, okay, well that's unfortunate. If the shine hits, you don't even get a combo. Like we need the drill to hit, or else we get nothing. But let's take Falco for example, where now I'm pressuring shield and I'm doing drill shine, drill shine, drill shine. Even if Falco puts people in so much hit stun that even if I do drill shine and the shine hits and I do another drill, I can the opponent's in hit stun above me. I could be like, oh, I'll go hit them now. That's essentially what hit confirming is, right? Like I am reacting to the fact that I got a hit, and now I am making a choice to go hit them instead of having to do some sort of immediate action. So there's a lot of situations, especially at the high level, where I don't have to make as many assumptions as I'm going through the punish game. I can sort of just like put people in DI mix-ups as it comes and choose what I want to hit people with and have time to think about it instead of again having to make those sort of assumptions. That's a big thing for me. The other thing is that I think that Falco has a lot of control and can choose what mix-ups happen and when they happen. So again, when I was referring to the fact that like, well, it's not Falco's fault, it's mine. It's like, well, if I get shield grabbed and down thrown, down tilted by Marth in the corner, did I have to do an early nair into the corner? Well, like the answer is almost always no. Like I could have just backed up and shot a laser. I could have dash danced or shielded or like waited for the mark to come in, or I could have done a late aerial. Like the amount of like control you have over Falco and the situations feels very powerful to me. I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of other characters in spots have to make a decision like in that moment and like okay, well let's just run the mix up, let's see what happens. Fox full hops in, it's like okay, well I'm committed to this full hop in now, like we're going.
Yeah.
Hopefully the Marth isn't like perfectly positioned, hopefully he's like swinging it down tilt and then I'll just full hop over him and down air him or something. The Falcon can sort of like wait and choose and pick the spots. And in fighting games altogether, I feel like that's just a very powerful thing to have.
Mm.
You almost want to, it's like, of course, you'd want to be in the driver's seat, right? You wouldn't want to be the one constantly responding. Um, and so, yeah, those are two big reasons, I guess I could say. And I think I'd have to get way nerdier, I think, in order to really break it down. Um, Last thing I'll say about it actually is I also think Falco has no losing matchups. Um, and that's like I don't know how you couldn't be the best character in the game if you had no losing matchups.
Hmm. Do you feel like when I watch Falco VODs, I feel like there's so much depth in the play and so much difference in the play when you look at different people who play them.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like one of the main ways, and you can correct me if I'm wrong if you disagree because you know more about this than I do for sure, but like one of the main ways that I see differences is how Falcos exert that control or how they put people into pressures where then the mix up becomes like Falco favored or they make them throw out something. Like, do you feel like there's a right way to do it, or do you feel like Falco has enough leeway where you can play him in different styles and still be number one?
I absolutely think that you can play in different styles and be number one. I think, yeah, it almost like speaks to Falco's strength as a character that he is able to do that. I feel like a lot of other characters might have to be almost like pigeonholed into a certain type of play style, or a certain like set of options or whatever. At the core of it, Melee is still a fighting game, and there are human elements to it all. And I think that like something that makes Mango so strong, for example, even though he might not participate in what I would consider the best risk reward scenarios, right? He might do something risky. He's doing that in a way where he's confident that it'll work because of information he's received or reads he has on the opponent prior. It's like, well, it might have a 20% chance to work because of all the options involved if everybody is perfectly aware and everybody's choosing the right options. But Mango might feel like he has a timing read on you. And so, like, that 20% chance is like, well, he knows exactly when you're going to do the thing. Or at least he can make that assumption. And he's right a good amount of the time because there's that human element to it that, like, he's participating in. And, like, the options that people choose, like you said, varies so much. There's a bunch of different play styles and option choice and move choice that people make, and Falco has so many strong options that the opponent has to worry about at all times. Like they have to be thinking: is this person going to running shine at me? Are they going to run up shield like Mango? Are they going to like full retreating laser? Are they going to pivot laser? Are they going to do a high laser, low laser? Like they have to be considering it all, and like all the different play styles can be effective, especially if that human element comes into play and you can just outplay somebody on like a human level, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. um, Certain characters, like their risk reward isn't good enough. Like if you take Kirby for example, like a character I play a good amount, um, you could outsmart your opponent, but it's just like you're never gonna make it work because
Yeah.
like at least in like a top 100 competitive level or whatever, because you can outplay your opponent 10,000 times on a human level, but like they will just outpunish you and you don't have enough things for them to worry about. But Falco does, so like he can outplay you in a couple different ways. And again, those are all different threats with different pacings and different humans controlling them that make different assumptions. And like the cool thing about Melee is that it's a bunch of different people with different brains, all trying to come up with solutions to the same problems. And I think Melee is so complex that it's like impossible that you'll find some sort of rigid answer
Mm,
in almost any at least neutral situation.
mm. Interesting. I want to talk to you a little bit more about the human element that you're referring to, because I
Mm-hmm.
think like maybe for my level it comes up a lot differently than at your level, because at my level like people will just do like something a lot and you can just
Mm-hmm.
punish it. So it'll be like if I'm Falco and the fox is full hopping a lot, I can just punt like, okay, he's full hopping again. And
Mm-hmm.
they rarely make adjustments in game or whatever, it takes some
Yeah,
time, and I have the same thing too. I'm not trying to say I'm above it, I'm not. You know what I
sure.
mean? I'm a dirty full hop fox, so
Heck yeah, good.
but like I think when you talk about like Mango and this human element, I mean the mix-ups are so much more complex that it makes it so much more remarkable that he's able to do that. And so
Mm-hmm.
my question to you as more of an analytical player is that something that you can practice? Can you hone in on that human element, or is it more like an intrinsic factor that people have?
I think you can definitely work on it. I think there's like a level of understanding in a situation where you're like, well, I could do this, or I could do that, or I could do this, or I could do this other thing, and then think about the fallouts of all of those situations. And again, that would be practicable. You could like analyze the situation and be like, okay, well, if I did late nair there, if they shielded, then I have a really good shield pressure situation with the
Hmm.
late nair. Maybe afterwards I do a shine. Okay, well, after the shine, I do late nair shine on somebody's shield. What could I do after that? Um, and then like you can sort of again analyze, well, I'm playing against X opponent, not just like Marth. I'm playing against Zane or whatever, or Kadoran. What are they likely to do? What have they been doing a lot again out of shield? Like, what could I do in response to that? And I feel like Mango, I mean, he used to do a ton of analysis. I feel like people don't give him enough credit for that. That he is an analytical person, and he used to do like analysis Mondays or whatever on his stream,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
which is super cool. I also think he's just very present and aware when he plays Melee, and that is just like he sort of has this natural ability to, he doesn't have to go into the VOD all the time and pause and be like, what did they do last time that I was hitting them on shield when I got a late nair? It's like he will recognize those things and make adjustments maybe a little bit more naturally than people in real time. And I think for somebody like me that maybe, I don't want to say like I don't have that natural gift or whatever, but I think most people would say that Bango's naturally gifted in some sort of way.
Hmm.
um, that like I might have to put in a little bit more effort to make those same adjustments. But the next time I go play Kadoran, I'll have multiple options in my like in my arsenal that I can bring up when those situations come up. Um, and that I have like gone into Uncle Punch and labbed and practiced. And so like um, yeah, there's also like what I would consider an athletic aspect to the game, which is like execution.
Hmm.
Mango's execution is incredible, and like sometimes all it takes is like not messing up once you get into a spot. And, like all the top five in the world, they just like don't mess up almost ever. There's like small things that they mess up or whatever, but like that's a gigantic component to like being a human being and playing the game. Is like, well, a human's not going to play perfect, but how close can we get? Um, like not perfect in sense of option choice and analyzing risk reward, but like literally, are they executing the thing that they're trying to do?
Hmm.
And that absolutely is practicable. Um, so yeah, that's essentially how I'd think about that.
Interesting. I got a couple more questions on that then. So, actually, this is more on Falco. So, I've
Hmm.
heard, and I want to see if you agree with this or not, that Falco is like known as the mix-up character. Like,
Sure.
it isn't like as clear cut, as defined. When I think of mix-ups personally, I think of like that risk reward factor. Like, if you can get into a mix-up that is favored for you, you should get into that mix-up versus like a 50-50 or even worse.
Hmm.
But that necessarily like that makes me think of like EV, like expected
Yep.
value. And that also makes me think of variance. Like I play poker, so like I think,
Sure.
sometimes you have aces and they get cracked by kings. And so
Yeah.
when you play a game that has so many different options and so many different mix-ups and you can die off of messing up one thing, especially at
Hmm.
your level. Does that variance like frustrate you? I mean, like how do you deal with that? Because sometimes you could put them in the mix up that you wanted to. You do the like quote unquote right idea and they just like they did something that just beat it that time and then you
Hmm.
died for it and it's like okay, all right.
Yeah. Uh, it is frustrating, but I almost feel like it's my job as a competitor to like not get frustrated by that.
Mhm.
Because like let's say that you play like the correct play in poker, right? Like you have aces, like pre-flop you go all in or something, right? And like maybe if you analyze it, that's like the that was supposed to be the right thing to do
Mhm.
based on like how people were betting or whatever. Um, and then you still lose. And you essentially, as a poker player, just have to be like, well, I lost my money, but I did the right thing. As long as I do that, like throughout the course of my career, I should come up ahead,
Mhm.
right? It's essentially how you think of it, like as a poker player. And so in melee, it's like, well, you can lose for doing a good thing, and being honest with yourself and saying, did I just do a good thing and lose, or did I do something bad and lose? Like, should that be addressed? It's like that's so important because you don't want to change a good thing just because you lost. Like the next time you have aces, you don't want to fold, right?
Yeah,
Like you'd
yeah.
never fold like pre-flop with aces. Like unless there's some super weird scenario maybe. And so analyzing that's important and figuring that out. But yeah, I think that is really at the core of it, that you can lose for doing a good thing. And then on top of that, you don't want to be predictable. Because something that you kind of said was, well, it's kind of setting up a good risk reward situation for yourself. And as long as you set that up, you should participate in it. It's like, well, in almost every scenario, there's like a low risk, low reward option, and there's like a higher risk, higher reward option.
Hmm.
It's like, well, then which one do you choose in this scenario? Like maybe it's a good situation to participate in, but there, man, Melee's so complicated because what's the percent? What's the exact stage position? What's the
Yeah.
stock count? What did I do last time? What should I think that my opponent is considering for that I'm gonna do? What type of response do I think they're gonna make? Have I been too predictable in this spot? Maybe they already know what I generally do because they've analyzed my play previously. Like, oh, it gets complicated. Maybe you should actually participate in a worse EV situation where you're less predictable with what you do. Um, like they have a better chance of coming out ahead on the mix-up, but you might have more prior knowledge in that situation. And so like maybe we don't attack them in the corner, which like it's good to attack people in the corner a lot because they're very close to the blast zone and being off stage. But it's like, well, that could be a little bit more risky. What if I just back up? That is a good situation for me. I should participate, but like, man, every time I go over there, they just seem to know what I'm going to do. Maybe I'm a little bit too predictable. So then, yeah, back it up, participate in a different mix up. It doesn't have to be a better mix up, but maybe just a different scenario.
Hmm. You said something interesting there. You said like, you can do something that's like good, something that you've practiced and like it's good, and sometimes it just gets beat.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but I'm a 2 and 2er. Sometimes I do something that I think is good, and then I watch the VOD. And I'm like, that's not good. That was
Uh
terrible.
huh.
So, what's your process in defining what is good? I mean, I'm sure that means a lot of VOD review, a lot of stuff outside the game, Uncle Punch, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah, it's so crazy these days because like Slippy replays, having access to your replays, and then like the Slippy statistics are kind of helpful in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more important to analyze like the actual situations going on. But having all the replays to watch is crazy. I'm just gonna say that because back in my day or whatever, you used to like have to beg the stream runner at a tournament to like let your set be on stream so
Yeah.
that you could have a VOD to go home and watch. And everything else, you just had to play the game and be like, I think I remember that this person like back aired me at a shield. Like, why did that happen? Did I do my aerial too early? I don't know. And then like, hey, Kalini, can you drive an hour and come over so that we can test this thing? I was getting back aired at a shield, and like we'd have to run it. I don't know. It'd just be so weird. But now you can literally just watch all your things. And then Uncle Punch, absolutely, I use all the time, which is really cool. But figuring out if something is a good or a bad decision, you can essentially just be like, well, you can analyze the expected value of like the outcome of a situation, and that is important. And then you can essentially say like, was there something better I could have done uh, that like I don't lose anything for doing something better. Um,
Mm.
like if it's as easy as I shouldn't have down aired because I wouldn't have gotten a combo and instead I should have nared, it's like, okay, well then down airing was a bad decision and naring would be a good decision in that situation. Um, so it really is just like finding the spots where you can squeeze more value out of those situations, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I really like that answer. I want to switch it up a little bit. I got so many things to ask you and not enough time. So,
For
uh,
sure, whatever you want.
one of the things I want to ask you is, you were a sponsor player with Luminosity. You've seen how the scene has done not only, in the meta in game, but outside the game financially and through sponsors. And like you said, you've been through that process of supporting yourself through the game.
Hmm.
Where do you see the game and how it stands today and going into 2024? And are you positive on its growth? Are you sort of like skeptical on its growth? What are your thoughts?
Uh, I'm pretty optimistic when it comes to this stuff, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
I not to get like too poetic or dramatic or whatever about it, but Melee has really stood the test of time. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? Like Maybe there's some games that have been around, like Call of Duty's been a game for a long time that has like a competitive scene, but it's always the new game and it's always a different type of scene and it's always like run by somebody else. And it's like I feel like the Melee community at a grassroots level has like always persevered. I've seen like people freak out constantly. I've been around for 20 years. The amount of times like Nintendo has shut us down or like the scene is dying. Like I've heard it all. I've seen it all. MLG stopped hosting tournaments. Uh-oh, there's no money in the scene anymore. Um, there's just a million of these things, and the Melee community has grown throughout my lifetime so much that it's insane.
Hmm.
Uh, and like you might even think, oh, there's a global pandemic. So a bunch of gamers, 1,000 gamers can now not all meet up in one room for multiple years at a time. The whole community is based off of meeting up in one room with a bunch of gamers. Like, well, we can't have that. Sorry. And it's like, okay, well, maybe the community just dies. Nope. Slippy, Uncle Punch, all these online options that you can do. The scene is like bigger than ever because of like all these really accessible, amazing online options. Um, Local communities are coming back stronger, especially after the pandemic. Um, National tournament attendance is up. Genesis is going to be bigger this year than it was last year.
Hmm.
It's like I think that we're seeing numbers really return, especially after the pandemic. And I think that if you really take the entire community, the people that are involved online, and like add them to the people that are participating in local tournaments and national tournaments, regional tournaments, I think that we're in a really good spot, to be honest with you. And a bunch of people have gotten dropped from sponsors. I guess I'm one of them. But I really feel like there's still a lot of people who are sponsored. There's still sponsors out there who are looking for Melee players. Um, Esports is almost in kind of a weird spot right now, but that's never stopped the Melee community.
Hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, I legitimately I feel very optimistic about it. I don't think the Melee community is going anywhere anytime soon, unless like a meteor hits. To be honest.
Yeah, I agree with you, honestly. I really agree with you. I think, especially one point that you touched on, how the local scene has been revitalized after COVID. The regional scene has been doing great. Shout out to all our
Hmm.
regional TOs that keep on innovating and pushing.
Hell
Um,
yeah.
so I totally agree with you on that. What do you think are some of the things that the community can uh, grow in 2024? What are the things that maybe we can improve on?
Hmm, that's an interesting question. I feel like just continuing to grow local scenes and communities where it hasn't popped back up is important.
Hmm.
Um, Man, we've already grown so much. I just feel like I want the people that are off or the people that are playing online to get involved in the offline play. And I think a
Hmm.
lot of people are, but I think it could be even bigger than that. Cuz again, I have this love for the like real in-person community in my heart. I think it's such an awesome thing to be a part of that you don't get a feel for that just playing Melee online, just talking to people in Discords. Like that's a thing, but it's not like the tangible love like that you really get in terms of the community. So I just like to see some way to incentivize players from the online community becoming more involved in like attending locals because for some I don't think people always see the benefits. People will be like, why would I go to X tournament when I could just like queue up ranked? And it's like, dude, hanging out with all of your friends, talking to people, socializing, getting outside, like driving somewhere, playing the real version of the game where like there's CRTs. This is like what we were built on. Every tournament runs on. That's all really important and really cool and really fun. I don't necessarily know how you incentivize that outside of just making the local community or local tournaments great. Um, but yeah, that's I guess what I'd like to see a little bit more of.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, if anyone who's listening to this is like just an online only player, I encourage you to find your local scene and grow
Hmm.
through it because I think, at least speaking for me, it's made me a better person too. I mean, I've just learned so much and had so many fun times, so many memories, not only just on the sticks, but like just outside of the game. It's just really good people, especially in Michigan. Shout out Michigan. So,
Absolutely. Shout outs Michigan.
uh, I want to ask you going into 2024, what are some of your goals that you've been working on, and what are some of the things that you want to accomplish? Not necessarily has to be like a rank or like I want to win this or I want to do top eight that, but like
Hmm.
maybe inside the game as well as the certain things that you've been working on with your character? I mean,
Oh, I feel like it's just a constant process with me. I'm process driven. I'm sort of seeing kind of the value of goals being proven, like even like scientifically or whatever. Again,
hmm
I'm like an analytical person, but like goals are important. I don't have that many concrete goals. What I always say to people is that I just want to play well, because I think if I play well, I can achieve greater things than I consistently get normally. Like playing well for me means outplacing my seed at tournaments, which would just mean continuous growth.
hmm
Um, but that comes with a lot of practice, putting in a lot of hours, and like in game stuff that I'm working on is just like consistency. Like I said, one of the factors that very obviously makes somebody a top 5 player in the world or top 10 player in the world is consistency with their actions. Like, okay, I can't be messing up as much as I do. Maybe Falco's hard, but like Mango does it. Zoo
hmm
had done it when he was top 10. Shiz did it when he was top 10. PPMD did it when he was top 10. PC Chris did it. So it's like, okay, I could do it, right? I'm just another guy.
hmm
Um, so working on consistency is huge for me because I really think that'll be helpful. Um, and I think I should spend some time maybe like journaling or thinking about a little bit more like a concrete goal for maybe some placements that I want, maybe like a certain rank that I want to get to, because I do think it could be helpful. But I honestly haven't thought that much about it because I'm just so wrapped up in practice in the process, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, what are your thoughts on like rankings? The rankings just came out. We're at top 30 today, so
Hmm.
congratulations by the way at the day of the recording. Like what I know for a lot of people it's like so important to get top 100. It's like make or break. Other people
Hmm.
not so much. I mean, what are your thoughts on making that a goal when it's sort of arbitrary? I mean, you're just like putting your goal in the hands of like I don't know how many panelists there are, and they're qualified people, but
Sure.
it's not like you ran a marathon and you got like fifth place. You know what I mean? It's
Hmm.
definitely different.
So many things to say about this. Essentially, um, I think it's cool. And I think that if you want to care about something, hell yeah. The more things you can care about, the better. So
hmm
like if it's cool to you that you get ranked, that is awesome. When I first appeared on the top 100, I it was an amazing day. I remember being ranked. I loved it. It's so cool. And that is just something that's awesome. Maybe it's like arbitrary, but like most, I kind of consider most things to be arbitrary. But if you can
Definitely.
enjoy it, and if you can be inspired by it, like hell yeah, enjoy things and be inspired by things. That's awesome. um but what I will say is that rankings, there's a subjective element to it, and it's weird to just say you are like, my rank is 26 this year. It's
hmm
like you are number 26 in the world. It's like, well, with the culmination of my year over the course of all the tournaments, what I really am as a player is that I have a certain amount of potential. I can play poorly or I can play well, or I can play anywhere in between. It's like maybe at my peak, I'm not number 26 in the world. Maybe I'm number 8 or something. And maybe at my lowest point, maybe I'm like not even top 100, to be honest with you. That might be the range of my spectrum. And throughout like 10 tournaments over the course of a year, I have somehow found myself against other people's spectrums. I'm number 26. Like, what does that even mean? Like, when I meet up against number 11 in tournament, am I like intimidated that like they're number 11, I'm number 26, and that's our skill levels? It's like, no, skill levels are not static like that. It's not a thing. You're not that number. It's like certain days you play better than others.
hmm
Um, and so it doesn't mean that much to me anymore, especially now that I've been ranked and I'm climbing the ranks. It means a lot to me to just like sort of see myself progress more and like raise my skill floor and my skill ceiling. Like the more I can do this, the better. And sometimes the number can be some sort of gauge for that. But I already do so much analysis of my play that it's like I can tell if I'm doing better than I was. I
mm
don't need a number or a panel to tell me that. Um, and of course, there's always things to be working on. So like, I'm not number one in the world yet, so there's got to be something. Um, but again, just if it's cool to you, then hell yeah. If you want to rise the ranks, that is super cool. I think that's awesome.
That is interesting. I want to switch it up a little bit. You know, one thing for me that I love about Melee is that, like I've said multiple times even on this podcast today is like it's helped me grow as a person. And I
Mm-hmm.
think what something that you're saying, how you're a process driven person, has helped me as well, because I agree with you. I think like the process is more rewarding than like the rewards itself, you know? Like it
Mm-hmm.
feels good to beat that bracket demon, but then what? You know what I mean? It's like the
Yeah,
process
absolutely.
that you learn through that. And one thing that I've been working on is like stuff that necessarily isn't inside the game that I want to work on as a person, and using
Mm-hmm.
melee as like a subject for that. So like one thing for example would be like competing with empathy. Like
Mm.
I came from like an athletic background, like sports and stuff, and when you won, and I don't know if it's more of a cultural thing. I feel like it's more of a black thing too, but like when you won, you let someone know that you won, and when you lost, they let you know that you lost. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And definitely in melee, especially now in these days. Maybe back in the day it was a little different, but now in these days, that's just not the case. It's just not how it goes. And I think for the
Mm-hmm.
better. You know what I mean? We're all competitors. So
Mm-hmm.
it's something that I've been trying to work on. Like, do you have anything like that that you've been trying to work on, or looking to work on in 2024?
Yeah, I mean, something that I think is important and like kind of weird. I know I think Jmook talked about this too at one point, but it's hard because I'm so motivated because it's my career, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think about what I can do to improve at Melee, and essentially everything is driven by that. So
Hmm.
it's like, okay, well, I want to take up meditation. It's like, well, do I want to take up meditation, like work on myself? Do I want to work on myself because I think it'll help me win at Melee? It's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, that's weird that I'm meditating to because I want to win at Melee, but maybe it will make me a better person along the way. And so, like, one of these things is respecting my opponent. It's just like a phrase I say in my head all the time. No
Mm-hmm.
matter who it is, this is like a competitor who stepped into the ring. They signed up for the tournament. Respect this person across from me, right? Like, um, and I would love to say that it's just because I like care about the other human being and their human efforts, but if I disrespect my opponent, I find myself being complacent, or being lazy within the game,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't respect them as somebody that could beat me, and then all of a sudden I'm losing to somebody that I don't respect, and losing to somebody that you don't respect feels also a million times worse than losing to somebody that you respect. Um, so I almost have this thing where it's like, well, I want to respect every opponent that I play against, especially if they were willing to like sign up for a tournament and show up. Um, but it's kind of with the goal of hopefully beating them even more consistently, which is kind of weird.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely though. I get that.
I'm glad that you get it, but yeah, so that's a big thing for me because I feel like that's something I could be honest about. Like I've definitely disrespected people in the past, and they've surprised me and then beaten me. Um, and so yeah, I have to come to terms with like everybody's a competitor, everybody's out here trying, everybody wants to win. You just have to go into it with a level of respect for another human who's putting themselves out there. You know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I definitely feel you on that, because that's definitely one thing that I need to work on as well. Like I'll be playing someone in tournament, and I'll like do like a good couple stocks or a good first game, and I'll be like, this guy ain't. He ain't got it like that, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? And then
Uh
I'll
huh.
just start like doing stupid stuff in neutral because I'm like, and then they'll know how to beat that stupid stuff, and I'll lose, and I'll be like, what the hell? What was I doing? Da da da. So I
Yeah.
definitely feel. I feel like that's something that a lot of people struggle with as well. And
Mm-hmm.
definitely in the online era, like we were talking about too, when you don't have that
Yeah.
humanization and it's just some rando on the screen, you're like, dude, I definitely feel you. I want to
Yep.
ask you about perception, because I feel like that sort of relates.
Mm-hmm.
You've been in the scene for a long time, and you've been through, I mean, it's not like you're like a celebrity by any means. This is melee that we're talking about, but you
Yep.
definitely have an eye on you that most people throughout their day to day life doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be on online spaces or when you're at a tournament, people are like, oh, that's Ginger, like they know you and stuff like that. How has that affected you? And do you feel like it's affected you positively, or do you feel like it's affected you negatively, I guess?
My instinct, what my gut was telling me to say, is that it impacts me really negatively.
Mm,
Um, I thought about it for like a split second. I was like, well, there's a lot of positive things that come with it, though. The amount of people that come up to me and like tell me they're a fan of my videos or whatever, or that they like love my stream, or that I've inspired them with my Falco. It's like those are all awesome things. And like the friendships that I've been able to make, or the connections, like I was talking about with like Zoo or Brandon. It's like I don't get that unless I'm Ginger the guy who's like good at melee, right?
Yeah, not just
I'm
some
like,
rando.
man, and those are valuable, cool things that I
Hmm.
really love. People will like fly me out to their tournaments. What? People will give me money. What? Like, thank you. That's crazy.
Hmm.
Um, and those are a million positive things that I do want to recognize. But I will say that why my instinct says this is because being perceived as like, I don't know, a persona, or like a lot of people will view me almost like a sports team, something to like root for or root against.
Yeah.
And like we're talking about dehumanization, and it's like I don't feel like people think of me as like a just a person that's out there trying. It's like when I lose, some people are like, "Yeah, fuck that guy." And it's like, "What, dude? I'm just a dude going through life like trying to be good at a video game. Like
Yeah.
when did it happen that I'm like this thing to root against? Like I guess maybe I shouldn't take the people that root for me so seriously if I have an issue with the people rooting against me, but um yeah, I don't love that like if I post something on Twitter, it has to be like a piece of discourse too, or like that everybody feels like they have to have an opinion. It's like I just like to have my thoughts,
Hmm.
you know? But yeah, so the perception thing, I'm not a fan of. Like, I don't do it. I don't do any of this for any level of recognition. Like, that's never a motivator for me.
Yeah.
And like I said, I will recognize it. I say that it's cool, all the positive things that come with it. But um, if I could just never be seen, if I just could wear a mask and nobody knew who I was or whatever, and I never shared my thoughts, I'd probably be happier, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
Um, I really don't enjoy the being perceived as like Ginger the guy.
Yeah. I definitely feel that. I mean, it's a weird thing. I don't know if it's a human thing or what, because I see it a lot in sports. I'm a big sports fan. And just
Hmm.
the way that people, especially in the NBA, okay? I'm an NBA guy, and
I love the NBA.
if you ever been on NBA Twitter, you see how these people act.
Mm,
It's insane. And it's like
mm,
these are real human beings who are like passionate about the game that they love. Yes, they get paid millions of dollars, but
yep.
like these are real dudes that you've never met before, you never will meet. They have the families, they're like going through life. Like some guy might have an off game, like some he might have had a bad day. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like we all have bad days. And then I feel like it's starting to get like that in Melee as well. I don't know if it's just Twitter or what, but like it's very weird like how we perceive and treat people that we don't really know. And so I think that was like one of the things that I wanted to do in this podcast was like sort of like show that these are like real people that we're talking about here. It's
Hell
not
yeah.
just like, some entity or something like
Yep.
that. And not only that, but Melee players don't get paid millions of dollars. It's one thing to like I guess it's like part of the job if you're LeBron James, like yeah, like he gets hated on and wrongly so, but he's
Yep.
a billionaire. So like it's at least he could cry his tears away with the cash. But this is Melee, bruh. Like I don't
Yeah.
know. That's just what I think about it.
Um, I can't remember who said it in The Last Dance. You watched The Last
Yeah, I
Dance?
did, yeah.
I can't remember who said it, but they were like, we get paid millions of dollars, but like I would play basketball for free.
Yeah.
They're like, we get
Mhm.
paid the millions of dollars to deal with everything else,
Yeah.
and it's like, yeah, I mean that's real. Like I would play melee for free. Dude, if melee like died or whatever, there's no money in the scene. Like I'd be in somebody's garage next weekend playing melee or whatever. Like I
For real.
love doing this.
Mhm.
Um, just unfortunately we aren't getting the paid millions of dollars, so it's hard to like I don't have the money to wipe away my tears with.
Yeah.
So it really is like, man, it can affect my mental health when hundreds of people potentially are like telling you that you're shit or like really love when you lose. It's like, what, dude, I was just a kid playing video games.
Yeah.
Like now hundreds of people are rooting against me or like calling me shit, or like they'll talk about your looks or your appearance or like
Mhm.
what you're wearing or how you walk or the way you play. It's like, dude, what the fuck? Like I'm just trying to have fun, play a video game, follow my passions, maybe make some money so I can pay my rent. Like that's all I got.
Yeah, I definitely feel you. I feel like Twitter is the main one. I was talking
Hmm.
to PPMD and other people outside too about like but PPMD on the podcast, but outside the
Hmm.
podcast too. And it's like I feel like if Smashboards or something like that would be back instead of Twitter, because anything you tweet now, it's like you said, it just turns into crazy discourse. Like you'll just
Yeah.
tweet one little thing about a character, God forbid it's a low tier or a mid tier. Shout out all my homies. Shout out all my homies, but y'all get for real about that. And
Uh-huh.
next it's off to the races, I swear to God. Do you feel like you have been able to at least take positives from that negative? Like you've seen how people have reacted and it's made you had to internalize things about yourself so that you could be more confident and say like, yeah, you know what these people are saying don't represent me? Or do you feel like it's
Mhm.
gone the opposite way where it's hurt your confidence and made you feel like you don't feel secure in yourself?
Um, I think that when I see the negative stuff, like on Twitter, for example, just to get real or whatever, I had a pretty traumatic past with bullying in my
Mm-hmm.
life. It was like really hardcore. I was the most bullied kid in my high school, my middle school, especially. And that was like really tough for me. People like calling me things, saying things about how I looked or acted or whatever. And so when people say like these negative things about me online, a lot of people will be like, why don't you just ignore the haters? And it's like, dude, I'm just a guy and I have like trauma in my past that like makes me react pretty negatively to these things. Like it's hard
Mm.
for me to just put that away. Um, so most of the time that's tough. I will say that it's inspired some reflection because I do have to think like, am I a piece of shit like these people are saying? Am I being a dick? Am I the angriest, saltiest guy in the melee community? Like, am I the rudest guy when he loses? Like, maybe I should analyze that. Maybe I should talk to people that aren't only my friends, but people I respect the opinions of
Mm-hmm.
and really seek out what I could change or improve about myself. And I've done a lot of that. And maybe that wouldn't have happened if these people didn't say those things. And so, in some weird roundabout way, I mean, it probably has helped me improve myself. But um, I wish it was through a different medium, I guess.
Definitely. I definitely get you on that. The last question I have that's melee related before we go to, hobbies and things outside of melee
Hmm.
is I guess it relates to perception, but it's about legacy. I like to ask
Hmm.
people, especially people who've been in the scene for a while, what do you feel like you want your legacy to be? I mean, there's so many more games of melee to be played, so many hopefully
Hmm.
more years of melee in, your career and my career and all of our careers. And I want to keep playing this
Definitely.
game forever. But like
Hmm.
what do you feel like you want your legacy to be when that day comes and you step away from the scene and step away from the sticks?
Yeah, I have this YouTube video. If anybody watching this is interested or whatever, it's called like Perseverance, the story of Ginger or whatever. And I was sort of talking about with my editor when I made that video that I just essentially shared my story as like my journey as a competitor. Um, and I was sort of like the thing I want to really showcase to people is the idea of perseverance. I get some hate from people. I'm not gonna name them, but there's like some top players that have said and like shit talk to me that like I've only been playing for 4 years and I took a set off you or whatever. You've been playing for what 2 decades? Like you're still this bad or whatever. I'm like, I enjoy the fact that I've taken 20 years and I'm still improving. Like I get that it takes time or whatever. Maybe it's taking me more time than others. I guess I was also a child when some of these years that I was playing. It's kind of hard to make big strides. But like I'd really like my legacy to be like the guy who like lost and took a bunch of shit and like continued to push. I told you that like I've thought about quitting more times than most people have considered picking up the controller to just play the game. And
Hmm.
it's like the fact that I've found reasons to continue pushing, I hope is inspiring and I hope will be my legacy. And I'd like to become the best player in the world someday. Like I have had setbacks in my life and in my career and it's taken me a long time, but I want to be the guy that like through it all managed to continue grinding and practicing and improving.
Definitely. Well, I love that, and I hope you keep persevering through it all and keep improving.
Thanks.
Um, I want to ask you some stuff outside of the game too. Always
Sure.
interested in what people are doing outside of the game. You said that melee
Mhm.
is a big part of your life, but I'm sure there are smaller parts that you would indulge us in. One of the ones I want to ask you on is something that you touched on. You play music. You
Mm.
said you were a percussionist, right?
Yeah.
So how did you get into that, and do you still continue? Do you still play?
Whew. Um, I don't play much anymore. Just to
Hmm.
answer that question, I'm about to start playing a bunch. I'll get to it.
Yeah.
The way I was introduced to it, I sort of started piano lessons. My mom like pushed me to do some piano lessons when I was young. I liked it. It was kind of cool. And then I wanted to be a drummer. I want to like play the drums. So it was like percussion in school is how you're going to do that. And you needed to do like 2 years of piano in order to play percussion in school. I started doing that. It was cool. And then, to be honest, it's kind of weird how this ties in. But I got bullied a ton, and I like started intentionally flunking a bunch of my classes.
Oh.
But I would just come home and I would listen to a lot of music and I would play to a lot of music.
Hmm.
And that was like almost like my safe space was like, okay, music is like there for me. Like the rest of the world might be shit. And there are people who are making music that are like expressing like this sort of like frustration or loneliness or anger or whatever. So I listened to like a lot of either angsty music or sad music when I was younger or whatever. But
Hmm.
like that was something I was like, whoa, I connect with this. It's not like when I go to my math class, I'm like emotionally connecting with the numbers or something. I was like, this is cool. So I quickly became like just a regular band kid who was um, just kind of there for the credit or whatever. To
Yeah.
somebody that like I started grinding, especially in high school. I started grinding. I was a freshman and I was like the lead of the drum line. I was like I was really involved in the music scene, like first chair or whatever. It's not what you'd actually call it in our high school or whatever. But
Hmm.
yeah, I like led a bunch of stuff, and it was cool to see myself improve at something that I cared about. I got like a drum set when I was I think 11 or 12 or something. I like got a band with a couple of my friends or whatever. That was really fun. Um, but yeah, I don't play a ton anymore. I'm about to get my drum set back. I've lived in apartments for a long time, and like drum sets
Yeah, you
just
can't
aren't.
do it.
You can't do it.
Yeah.
You could, but you'd be the biggest jerk.
Yeah, you might get
Um,
into a fight in the parking lot.
it might be bad. I might get tracked down. But my girlfriend's dad lives nearby, and he has a house, and like a bunch of people have like moved out of that house, and so there's some empty space, and like he travels for work all the time, so he wouldn't be bothered by me playing the drums if he wasn't there.
Hmm.
So like I'm gonna get my drum set back. I'm gonna start playing a ton again. Um, so yeah, I'm really excited for that.
That's awesome. So you said you listen to angsty music or something like that. Give us some
Mhm.
bands. Shout them out. We gotta hear what's on the playlist.
Yeah, here, let me. I have a tattoo.
Okay.
But so Nine Inch Nails is
Yeah.
is my favorite band. They're the first concert I ever saw. They have my favorite song. Nine Inch Nails for sure is like they're like also just very angsty and very sad. It's like a perfect culmination of everything I enjoyed back then. But I really like Rage Against the Machine. I'm just trying to think of things I was like inspired by back when I listened to like angsty music.
Hmm.
Rage Against the Machine, Tool was really cool. Smashing Pumpkins,
Hmm.
Nirvana, um, Silverchair. Goodness gracious, Muse was cool. I haven't
Hmm.
liked the last couple Muse albums or whatever, but Muse was cool. I saw
Yeah.
them in concert too.
Yeah.
Um, the Deer Hunters, a group that I've really started to love even more. Um, but yeah, so those are some groups that really that I still love them, but they really inspired me when I was in that phase of my life, I guess.
Have you felt like as you've grown in the years, like you've been able to branch out in music? Like I feel for me definitely. Like I'm listening to like music that I like 16-year-old Dewey would be like, why are you listening to smooth jazz right now? You know what I mean?
Hell
Like
yeah.
I don't know about you. Like what do you think?
Big time. For me, especially with the course of like maybe the pandemic, maybe last year or something too, has
Hmm.
been like pop music, not like necessarily radio hits or whatever, but just
Yeah.
like pop music, like maybe female vocalist pop music stuff that's like pretty simple in nature. Cause like, I like complex music. I'm a musician or whatever. Um, but that stuff has been really fun to listen to. And so just like accepting that there's music that's just fun to listen to it's
Yeah.
something that's been really big for me. Yeah. Like Charlie XCX, for example. I love Charlie XCX now. It's like, dude, if I was 17 and I showed like myself a video of me listening to Charlie XCX and like singing it in the shower, dancing or whatever, I'd be
Yeah.
like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, but no, that is awesome. I've absolutely branched out, and everybody should, I think.
I agree. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think it's a great experience to branch out. Plus, I mean, there's gonna be some stuff that you listen to, it just doesn't vibe with you, and you'll know it. But
Yeah,
you gotta try it.
big
What
time.
What are some of the things that you do to relax? Let's say you just got off of a long stream of ranked, and you lost some MMR and you're pissed off, what are you doing to settle down, relax? Are you watching sports? You watching TV? What are you doing?
Yeah, I watch some shows. I hang out with my girlfriend. We live together. We
Nice.
lived together for I think over 3 years now.
Wow.
Um, but no, we hang out a ton. We like, we're kind of on weirdly opposite schedules. She like works at a gym from 3 in the morning to noon. It works out though, because I go to bed at 3. It's a whole thing. Anyway, we
Yeah.
hang out. We watch shows. We watch movies. We watched The Bear recently. We're gonna start The Expanse as a show that we're watching next.
Hmm.
I don't get to watch as many like live sports. I keep up with scores on things. I follow the Lakers because like Kalindi is my friend and he cheers for them. So like,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
I'll just pick the Lakers. The Lions are doing great this year, so it's fun to like just follow their scores.
Yeah. Shout out
Um,
Detroit.
Shout out Detroit,
Yeah.
Jesus. Um, but yeah, so like I follow sports. I essentially, oh, one thing, I'm allergic to the sun. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I didn't know that.
Literally, I'm allergic to the sun. So outdoor activities are hard for me. It's
Mm.
like even during the winter, like the snow reflects the sun. Like a
Yeah.
lot of people get sunburnt or whatever during the winter. So like it's hard for me to go out and do normal things. I still can. I'm not like disabled or whatever, but
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I find a lot of it's lucky for me maybe that like I can't do those things, but I find a lot of joy and comfort in just like watching a show, or I play a lot of recreational video games. I've been learning Dota recently, which has been cool.
Mm.
Valorant, I play with like a group of my friends. League of Legends, we played a bit. Um, but yeah, just like casual games. It's funny I call them casual games because we always queue like ranked modes, and we
Yeah.
all we try to win every single time. But for me, it's like, well, I play games professionally, so this is like that's not competitive. This is like just trying to win,
Yeah.
and it's like for fun. But I play no single player games ever. I can't do it. I need to try to beat another person like anytime I'm playing a game, essentially.
I definitely feel that. Do
Yeah.
you like do you have some things that you want to try in 2024? Like I'm always interested to hear like I mean, I know like some people like, "Oh, I want to do like painting or something like that."
Hmm.
Like step out their comfort zone.
Oh goodness. I haven't thought about stepping out of my comfort zone really doing anything.
Mhm.
Um Man, not necessarily. I am going pretty hard in Dota though, I will say, which I didn't
Okay.
see coming, but like I don't know, maybe it's just my nature and like my competitive nature. But like I'm like studying Dota. Like
Uh-oh.
I've like read through all the abilities. I'm like learning all the numbers every time I play, like analyze my games, like
Yeah.
I don't know. So that's been a fun process where like I'm not like a professional MOBA player or something, but like here I am, like giving it a lot of my effort. Going out of my comfort zone. I mean, I'm gonna reintroduce music to my life, and I might try to like write some music too. Would be cool, and I think
Okay.
that would definitely be something. My girlfriend's a musician too, and she's never known me as a musician. Like
Mhm.
when I met her, I was done with music. I was like on to my melee thing. So like we want to play music together, and I think that would be a pretty cool thing that we've never done before.
That'd be really sick. That'd be like I think that's dope. I'm
I
I'm like
I think
the
it's awesome.
I'm like the least musically talented. I don't think I could play like the triangle if they gave it to me. You
I
know
could
what I
teach
mean?
you.
I'd appreciate that one day. One day. Last question. I always want to ask people who have tattoos because I don't have any tattoos. So I think like if
Mm.
you get a tattoo, it gotta mean something. I mean, not necessarily. You can have tattoos for fun and stuff, but I'm always interested like in what tattoos people have when they do say that you have tattoos. Do you have more tattoos or is that just the only one?
So it's sad. This is my only one.
Got you.
So, yep.
So when did you get it and what decide like I want to have this band on my skin? Like is it just like that it meant that much to you?
Yeah, so man, this is gonna maybe sound sad or something. My mom always said no tattoos. I swear to God, never get any tattoos ever.
Hmm.
And then I got my ears pierced. They're pierced. I don't know if you can see them.
Yeah,
And then I
yeah.
got my nose pierced,
Hmm.
and that was like maybe a little much for her still. But it was like okay. But she always said no tattoos. So I told myself I'd like wait till my mom like passed before I got tattoos. And she ended up my mom died cancer, whole thing. But
Oh, okay.
like
I'm sorry to hear that.
it's okay. I appreciate it. But
Hmm.
like one of the things was like, well, I can get tattoos now. But I always wanted it to mean something to me. I like And I think everybody tells me this. All the people with tattoos are always like, you always want your first one to mean something, and then you essentially you keep going, and you just want things that look cool.
Hmm.
But Nine Inch Nails was a band that like essentially helped me through the worst parts of my life, and like gave me something to connect to, and something my brother and I bonded over. That like he showed me this band. He's been such a big part of my life. Um, and it's like an iconic symbol. It's like symmetrical. It's like a stamp. It's really cool. I always thought it was a cool symbol, so I was just like, you know what, this is the one for a first tattoo.
Hmm.
Um, so I love it. I want more, and I'd like to get more that means something to me. But
Hmm.
also, I'd like things that just kind of look cool.
I feel you on that. Last question on the tattoo. Did that shit hurt? Because that looks like super, like that blacked out. That looks like it would hurt, dude.
So it didn't hurt that bad.
Okay,
I'll be real.
respect.
Like, okay, it like a little bit. The part that hurt is when they essentially have to like fill it in, and they like
Hmm.
went over the same spot a couple of times, and like, oh, okay. Like I thought they would be done by now, but like they're still going. And it like, I don't know, but it essentially just felt like burning to me. It's like if
Hmm.
somebody held a lighter up to my arm for like a little while, and like you'd be like, ah, that's kind of like, it's like burning me a little bit. But it was just like that for like a decent amount of time. Like people told me it was going to be like bee stings repeatedly. It's like,
Hmm.
oh, getting stung by a bee sucks, man.
Yeah,
There's no
that's what
way
I
I could do
hear.
that.
That's what I
Um,
heard. Okay.
it's not that bad. I swear
All
to
right.
God, you should get tattoos. It'd be cool.
Well, my mama's the same. She was like, no tattoos. She's an African mama,
That's tough.
so you know what I'm saying.
That's tough.
I gotta write it out, maybe or something like that. But I don't know what I would get. That's the main thing.
Dude, I was prepared to go for a long time with tattoo, like with no tattoos. It's like I
Yeah,
was gonna respect my mom and like not get tattoos, but it's just like, okay, well, I could get tattoos now. There's nobody here to yell at me, I guess.
I feel you on that. I definitely feel you on that. Well, I'll tell you what. If I ever get a tattoo, you'll be the first one to know. This is
Hell yeah.
this has been Items on Podcast. I'm your host, Ethiopium. Our special guest today is Ginger. Ginger, thank you so much for coming on, and I hope everyone has a great night. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thanks for having me.